Thank you. And welcome to Heart with Dr. Nieca. And joining me today is Tara Parker Pope. Tara is the founding editor of Well, the Times Award-winning consumer health site. She is also author of 3 books, including For Better, The Science of a Good Marriage, The Hormone Decision, and Cigarettes, Anatomy of an Industry from Seed to Smoke. And she's also an Emmy Award winner for the Well video series, Life Interrupted, which chronicled the challenges of a lung cancer patient in her 20s. Welcome to Heart, Tara.
It's always nice to see your face, so this is a treat for me. We haven't seen each other for a while.
To see you. You know, we're seeing many people remotely these days. And I realized that you were on my radio show about 2 years ago.
Is that how long it was?
That was how long it was. And recently I gave a Zoom lecture to doctors at Tower Health in Pennsylvania. And I discussed the research study that you interviewed me about how patients did better, heart attack patients did better when they were cared for by a female doctor.
I confess to loving that study. I really find that I have a doctor right now in my life, and I love him. Obviously it's a male doctor, and he's wonderful. So I don't think that, I think there's many wonderful male doctors and many wonderful female doctors. But what I liked about that study was that it looked at why this trend might be. And I think the answer was really that female doctors just were better listeners and more, invested in just that conversation with the patient. So I've always loved that research, and I hope that all doctors can learn from it. The doctor I have that I just love said, sit down, tell me your story. He didn't take notes. He wasn't looking at his computer. He's like, tell me your story. And as a journalist, of course, I want people who are interested in
taking notes.
Yeah, but this idea of telling your story as a patient and not trying to insert. What I find is when people talk to me about their health, sometimes they sort of diagnose themselves. And my main advice when people are going to go see a doctor that have a health problem is like, you're not the doctor. Don't try to be the doctor. You have the story. You have your information as a patient. Don't go in and say, I actually have a true story of a family member who went to a physician and said, I'm having migraines. And the physician gave her migraine medicine and she didn't get better. She got increasingly worse. And she went to another doctor who said, well, how long have you been having migraines? And she said, I've never had migraines. And he said, well, wow. And it turned out she sort of put this idea in the first doctor's head. He made an assumption that this was a chronic problem. As somebody who has migraines, I've been diagnosed with migraines too. So I could see doing that, but she hadn't been. This is a terrible story. It's a true story, but she is fine. This is a family member of mine. She actually did have a brain tumor, but she put her doctor on the wrong path because she sort of tried to do his job for him. So I always tell people, just go to the doctor, tell your story, tell what you're experiencing, and let them, guide you. And it's a great when it happens the right way, when you tell your story and your doctor asks you questions, and the information comes out in a meaningful way to the physician, it works, right? I mean, wouldn't you agree with heart patients that you have the same?
Absolutely. I love you for bringing this up because I think it's very important for patients to tell their story, because in medical school, often our professors, when we were learning about physical diagnosis or interviewing patients, would tell us and teach us that the patient will tell you their diagnosis. So it's really important for the person to come in and explain why they came for this visit. It's also the same reason why they went online to search out symptoms. We want to know their symptoms, and it's okay after they tell their story to ask, I read this online. Is this true? Is this relevant to me? But it's really a sharing experience. And in fact, I never type the patient's note when they come in to see me. I sit down and talk to them first and look at them. And then, then I do whatever I have to do with the medical record system after I examine them. And then we discuss a plan. And I really give them an opportunity to ask questions because it can be very scary. You know what else is another scary thing to patients? Now that they get all of their medical results, the medical reports haven't caught up with the patient's understanding of the language. You know, they really need to simplify things. And, you know, people get their medical medical results, and it's really scary to them.
Especially blood work results, right?
Right. You have to know when something's out of range. Is that going to make a difference to my health or not?
And I think people don't always understand. I get a lot of calls like this from friends, and I say, well, it's not uncommon for the white blood cell count, you know, to maybe be a little off, and ask your doctor what they think it means. It's really in the just on its own, it's not something to worry about. It's in the context of other things. And if your doctor has sent you a note and said, I got your blood work back, it's all fine, you can follow up with a question and say, why is this one item out of range? And usually they'll say, that's typical. Maybe you had a little infection, or I'm not worried about that. That's really not relevant to what your problem is. And they can reassure you, but people do freak out, and then they start Googling and they go down that. I'm a believer in Google. I'm a believer in empowering yourself with information, but not to scare yourself. I think that this is what people don't understand. Using Google, researching health information, it is not so you can be a doctor yourself. You didn't go to medical school. You're not seeing patients every day. You're not consulting with all the knowledge in the hospital system that real doctors have access to. What researching your health can do for you is it can help you frame your questions. It can teach you things to ask, right?
Right.
It's about the questions you're asking. You're not there to find answers. You're not there to solve the mystery of your illness. You're there to gather information, to think, to have some critical thought, and to like go to your doctor with 5 or 6 questions that mean something to you. And don't try to, you know, be an MD after spending an hour on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, it was something funny happened. A patient of mine had a stent, and she came in for her post-procedure visit. And I said, oh, I checked her blood pressure. I talked to her about her medicines, any side effects, things like that. And I said, well, now I think you're ready to go to cardiac rehab. And she goes, oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's something I looked up online. I was wondering if you were going to bring that up. And I said, well, you know, that is the standard. That's like a guideline for the American Heart Association. I should hope that everyone's cardiologist brings that up.
Right. And what I find is that doctors are really responsive when you ask a question. Like, I've never had a doctor say to me, you know, that's a stupid question. In fact, they always say, that's a good question. Here's the answer. But what I think is I think what I like to tell people is that it's you only hurt yourself if you go in and you say, doctor, I think the problem is I have, you know, I feel like I've got, you know, I've got GERD.
Right. And you do that in the emergency room, and then they might be having a heart attack, and they're going on they're going on antacid.
Right. You need to go in and say, what are your symptoms? What is your experience right now? You know, do you have pain here? You know, what else has been going on that brought you to we don't just go to the doctor every day. Something prompted you to make the effort, to make that appointment, to call the doctor, or to go to the ER. So that's your story. So anyway, I can go on about this, but this is the main thing. People call me all the time and they want me to diagnose them because I talk to a lot of doctors. And I say, no. Yeah, and I think where I try to guide people is to say, these are the questions you need to ask. This is the story you need to tell. You know, if you've been walking 4 miles a day for 3 or 4 weeks because of the pandemic, and you're developing foot pain, I think that's significant, and I think that's something you should share with your doctor, but don't just decide that it's definitely that. You know, you need to give your doctor the facts, and together you'll figure it out. But anyway, I think
it's very good advice I would be giving myself. But I really I also want to talk about some of your work, because you actually help lead people to better health, especially at the beginning of this month, you had your wellness challenge. And I found that very interesting because you included things like gratitude, friendship, and these exercise snacks. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I thought a lot, every year, January for a health writer, it's like tax season for an accountant. We're quite busy, and there's just very high engagement and interest. So you really want to connect with your readers in January, because a lot of people it's just the way our culture is. We start thinking a lot about health in January and starting new. And I like the idea of having a month where we say, let's reset and start something good. But I also knew that we're very worn out by the pandemic. There has been a lot of loss. As we've discussed, there's been a lot of challenges. This has been a really hard time for people. And I do this annual well challenge. And I really said, I think I need more well than challenge. I don't think people are really interested in a hard challenge. And so I thought, well, what have we learned in 2020? Let's reflect on 2020 and it hasn't been all bad. It's been a lot bad. It's been mostly bad. And it's been really, really hard on a lot of people. But even in those moments of loss and challenges, we have found resilience, and we found gratitude, and we have found these moments where we have tapped into reserves we didn't know we had. So I wanted to build on that in January. So I think, we talked about gratitude. I am a strong believer in a gratitude practice. I have a little book by my bed. And every day I write down, it's actually a guided book, but I write down something related to gratitude. And I just try to make myself reflect. I actually do it more than once a day. I started a hand washing gratitude practice because I was washing my hands so much. And, I learned, when you wash your hands, you're supposed to wash every finger, and your nails.
Yes.
So I started doing a 1, 2, every finger, there's 10, I would do 10 sort of gratitudes, I called it. And it takes time, and you have to focus, because 10's a lot, but it was a way to keep me, it was a moment, it was a habit I was forming of washing my hands often. So I thought, let's piggyback on that and practice some gratitude. The 7 o'clock clapping for our healthcare workers was this great collective social experience. I still have a trumpet player outside my door, who's still every night at 7. I love it. I don't know if it's a man or woman, hasn't stopped. But let's build on that. We've been practicing gratitude during the pandemic. So let's keep that habit for 2021.
I think people are showing, I can just see from people I'm seeing in the office, from my colleagues and coworkers at the medical center, they are practicing more of that. This has been a really challenging time to be in the healthcare business. You're actually learning about a disease at the same time you're treating it. And the challenges that come with it. With every day, there's a new research or a new thing online that we have to. I remember early in the pandemic, there was somebody wrote something online about ACE inhibitors and potentially a problem with COVID-19. And even the chairman of cardiology Dr. Fishman sent out an email like, this has been going on. A lot of our patients are on ACE inhibitors. It's probably, and those are very valuable drugs for many different areas of cardiovascular treatment, like hypertension, heart failure, prevention of kidney damage in people with type 2 diabetes. And, this was a study not in people. This was still in the laboratory. And in fact, colleagues of mine at NYU early in the pandemic started tracking the patients with COVID who were on ACE inhibitors, and they found there was no problem.
I think part of it is that what we learned about COVID, for the people who are listening or who are sort of wondering what this has to do with COVID, is that this virus, the gateway into our body, the way this virus enters our body and attaches and replicates is through these ACE receptors, which we have in our nose and we have throughout our body. And the use of that word, that ACE receptor, for anybody who is on an ACE inhibitor, drug, it was very confusing, right? Because they heard the same language, even though
it's the same thing.
Wasn't the same thing. So I think there's been more reassurance, but that was a big question we got early on. Should I stop taking my drugs? And it was like,
very big question. And we got phone calls and secure patient portal messages regarding that. And I think we all handled that very well. And our patients had their controlled blood pressure and were taking their medicines. But, I only made this is sort of similar to when I was training in medicine right after medical school and did my residency. It was really during the AIDS epidemic. And we were learning about a disease where we had people suffering from it at the same time. In fact, the disease at the beginning had no name, and then it was named. I always point out that from this horrendous thing, good will come, because something as simple as wearing gloves to draw blood started during that time. It's hard to believe that it wasn't before.
It's hard to believe that wasn't standard practice, but it wasn't. I remember, I was around.
Yeah, so that's that, I really want to, talk about that. And I also want to talk about how people have really adapted. For instance, I'm very impressed that my patients are finding ways to exercise by doing online work, exercise apps, online classes, YouTube classes. I know that we both have our own Peloton bicycle stories.
Yeah, which we should share. I do think home exercise, we mentioned earlier the exercise snack. I think one of the lessons of pandemic life is that you don't have to go to a gym or a group fitness class, that you can do exercise at home. And what I hope happens, I do hope we get back to the gyms and our group classes and all the things that we enjoyed before, and we will get there. But I think for now, what we've learned is that, for me, the big revelation was I didn't realize how much I was naturally moving. I would easily hit 10,000 steps a day. I live in New York City. I walk to the subway. Sometimes I'll walk to the second subway just to make it a little longer. Even just walking through my regular subway is a hike. I walk my dog 3 or 4 times a day because I don't have a backyard. So I have a lot of natural movement in my day. And when the pandemic hit, I went from, there would be a day, also I was working a lot when lockdowns first happened. As a health writer, I was very busy. So I would look at my phone, and on other days where I would easily hit 11, 12, 13,000 steps, just barely even trying, I'd have like 276 steps for the whole day. I would be like, oh no, like this is really bad. And I was incredibly sedentary, not because that's the way I am normally, but because I was in this artificial situation of locking down. And so we learned, right? We all learned, I've got to take a morning walk. I've got to take more walks. I've got to get up and take hourly breaks and just stretch and move. This is good anyway, under normal circumstances, right? These are good things to do.
It's great. We have a question from Olivia, and she writes, is there a negative effect to reading too many self-help books? I get obsessed and I feel like I'm not taking action.
I would say that I think self-improvement and always trying to be better is a fine path to be on. We all want to get the most out of this limited time we have here on earth. And I guess I would say, as long as you are approaching your self-help odyssey with compassion, with self-compassion, like I think a mistake we make in the wellness business is that we hold people to these incredibly high standards. 1 hour of exercise.
Not everyone is the same.
Right. And I think we have to approach this with let's just be a little kind to ourselves. So I think your starting point should be, what is your motivation? Am I doing this because somebody else told me to, or because I have a legitimate concern that maybe I'm eating too much sugar? So let me learn about eating sugar. Let me learn about the problem with ultra-processed foods. But if I decide that I want to have a cookie, that doesn't mean I'm a failure.
Or a bad person.
Or a bad person.
The cookie once in a while.
Right. I think that what we want to do with a self-help book is that we want to read it, we want to learn, we want to think about the way this might apply to our life, and is anything here helpful? I wrote recently about friction, about the things that prevent us from achieving our health goals. So maybe there was a study about if your gym is too far away, you're less likely to go as often. So maybe a solution to that friction is to say, I'm going to go to the gym closer to work, or I'm going to pack my gym bag and leave it in my car, or I'm going to, instead of making the gym my exercise, I'm going to really just try to schedule walks with my friends. We have to kind of solve these problems. So I think self-help books can be useful, but I think the ones that are the most useful are the ones that teach us a new way of looking at the world and thinking about the world, but it comes from a kinder, gentler, more compassionate place.
That's right.
So I think some of these really stringent, 30 days, do this, don't eat this food ever. You can do that, and it might be a fun thing to do with your friends, but it's not sustainable. So I believe in sustainable self-help.
I think you can read the self-help books and think about whether it's sustainable for your life.
Right.
And how it relates to you, because it's general information. So you can't take every word in the book as if it's relevant to you.
I think a really good example, I just finished writing a long guide for caregivers. And I'm really aware of this now when I give advice to people. So I might tell you that, try meditation, do this daily. This is good for you. But you know what? If you were sandwiched between caring for your children and your aging parents, and maybe you have somebody in your home and it's hospice care and it's very intense, the advice that person needs, the advice that caregiver needs, is to create a respite plan, to ask for help, to get your family together and say, I'm taking care of this elderly parent. I need your help to take care of me. I got to rally the troops, and what I need is a 30-minute break every day to just go clear my head and take a walk, or maybe on Saturday, I just want to get my hair cut. And I think that the advice I would have for a caregiver is not going to necessarily, that caregiver isn't going to find a lot of good advice in a self-help book, because it's not addressing the environment that she finds herself in, right?
Right.
So we have to always remember the environment that you're in, whether you're, giving advice to one of your patients. If you have a patient with a heart issue, and you kind of need to know her family life, her caregiving.
That's one of the first things I ask. I'm asking them, what does your day look like? Where can we think about fitting this in? You really have to tailor a prevention program to the person that's in front of you. And you can't, what works for one person doesn't work for another. So I think that we need to focus more on that in healthcare, because a lot of things that are predetermined, like guidelines and treatments, you can't apply every single guideline to every patient the same way.
And I think that's why there are a lot of books out right now on habit formation that are bestsellers. There's Good Habits, Bad Habits by Wendy Wood. There's The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. There's Atomic Habits, Tiny Habits. There's so many habit books. And I think people are looking for answers, right? They're looking for, how can I be better? How can I help myself? And I think the solution is always going to be, start small, start with small changes.
Right.
That's why I think exercise snacks is such a good idea, because it's really not saying exercise for an hour a day. It's saying 3 times a day, get up for 20 seconds and dance. You'll get some mental health benefits out of just dancing to your favorite song.
Yeah, you raise the endorphin level.
Yeah, or get on the bike and just do a 20-second sprint and then get off, and don't beat yourself up because you didn't do more. Just build in this exercise into your day. So you were saying that you have a Peloton. We both have Peloton stories. We should share them.
Yeah. So in February, my husband wanted to buy me a gift for Valentine's Day, and he said, I'll get you a Peloton. And I said, no, we'll have to fix up a space for it in the apartment. And then all of a sudden it's March, and we can't go to spin class or the gym anymore. And so by then, a lot of people caught on to that, and we were on a waiting list for a Peloton, but the good news is in between waiting for the Peloton to be delivered, I had access to the app. And so I was doing the aerobics classes and strength training. And then I finally got my bike. And what I love about it is that I can do it anytime that works for me. that I don't have to make an appointment or worry about getting into the class at a particular time. It's always there for me. And it's in my dining room and nobody's coming to dinner. So we took the leaves out of the table and it works really well.
So like you, I live in New York City. I live in a tiny apartment. It's probably 600 square feet. And I am very happy here. I love my apartment and I've made it very cozy. But I was looking around for where could I put an exercise bike? And I did a lot of research. I looked at a lot of different bikes. And I personally just kind of like the cult that is Peloton. I sort of like that, that it is a community. And yeah, they're all a little bit crazy and totally into, I kind of wanted that experience. Like some people are critical of the Peloton cult. And I was like, no, I want to be in that cult. So I thought that would be fun. And I looked into it and I ordered it. And I thought, where am I going to put this thing? And like you, I thought about moving, I'm looking over there. I thought about moving my dining table because I thought nobody's coming over. But for me, because my apartment is so small, the aesthetic is very important to me. I just, I like my art. I like the color of my walls. I just like this sort of feeling I get. And I felt like a Peloton was going to ruin my vibe. But the only solution, and I should not admit this, like talking to, all these people that are listening, but I looked at my apartment and the only solution was to change the bedroom and to go to a much smaller bed so that I could make room for the Peloton in the bedroom so that it would be there and I'd have space for it, but it wouldn't be in my living area where I kind of want this to be my happy place. And the problem is I'm now living like a college student. I kid you not, I have a single bed.
Wow.
But I was like, I live by myself. This is a pandemic. I'm obviously not dating right now. So right. I would just go for this single bed and live like I'm in a dorm, but I've got my Peloton. And I was really happy with that decision. And people have told me, a lot of people have said, you should never admit that. I've had many people, and here I am admitting it. I looked at the situation. I thought about what my values were and what I wanted and what was important for me. And at some point, I'll move to a bigger apartment, or maybe I will move the bike to the dining room. I don't know what I'll do. But for now,
to me, like, I'm glad you made that healthy choice. That's what I would say as a friend.
I thank you for that. I appreciate that. But what's interesting about the Peloton is there were things about it that were more difficult than I thought they would be. I thought that I didn't anticipate that my backside would hurt. You have to get used to it. And I needed to get padded bike shorts and I needed to get a padded seat. I don't like snapping in and out of the shoes. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm used to it because I used to go to spin class at SoulCycle. So I'm used to it. And I've been spinning for a long time, even when it started. And so I got past the bike short. You will get to a period beyond that. And so I don't need that. In my case, I have to have the seat all the way up and the handlebars really close. Otherwise I can't reach it.
Right. Well, yeah, you're a
height challenge. But, and then, so that I worked out. Of course, my husband changes the seats for his side, but he's fine. He puts it back up to where he's very good about that. And I'm also I also recommend the foam rolling classes on the app because you can break up a lot of that muscle soreness.
Well, for me, honestly, it was the padded bike seat I ordered. It was sold out. So I think everybody was discovering that they needed a padded bike seat. So I think it's just one of those lessons of exercise that when you make a change, you sort of anticipate it to be a certain way and you learn things about your body. The part of the Peloton I like the most is that I like to take these rides through different countries. Like have you done that? You don't have to take a class.
Oh, yeah, those, yes.
You can go biking through the Alps or whatever. So I enjoy that. But if you don't have a Peloton, there's all kinds of hacks. You can just get a regular exercise bike and you can use your laptop and you can look at apps and you don't have to invest all that money. If you want an exercise bike, do a little research. You can find all kinds of ways to find a bike that works for your budget, for your space.
And your space and that is important for people in New York City. Before we leave, I just want you to talk about the project you're working on with COVID-19.
Well, I'm always doing COVID. I mean, my main thing is that readers are asking me questions and I try to answer them. And that has been a big bulk of my work this past year. readers have been frightened by a lot of things, and we've just sort of taken these questions and taken them to experts and answered them. And I think it's been a really good, helpful use of my time. Right now, everybody's got questions about vaccines. And I think that that's been the big challenge. So we've done some reader Q&As with that. We're working on a big vaccine project where you can go to this resource and find every question you've ever thought of. You know, we asked readers in the morning newsletter, and we received thousands and thousands of questions, and we went through and tagged them and coded them and put them in categories. A lot of people have questions about women and fertility in the vaccine, pregnancy in the vaccine, children. What does it feel like? Is it cold going into my arm? And that's a question you could answer. I mean, I think people are super interested in the experience of getting the vaccine, and you've had it, so tell us.
Right. So on Monday, I completed the second COVID-19 vaccine. I received the Pfizer vaccine. And after my first injection, my arm hurt for about 24 hours. And I felt a little off, maybe a little tired. And rested the next day. It was a day I wasn't seeing patients, so I was able to rest. And then the day following, 2 days after the vaccine, I was fine. This time, I had the vaccine on Monday, and my arm was really sore initially after I received the vaccine. It got a little better a few hours later, and then I woke up at like 4 a.m. with really bad arm pain, and my whole shoulder and everything was sore. And it was something I expected, because colleagues of mine who had the second shot said they felt some of the similar symptoms. And I was a little fatigued, but I was able to work on Tuesday. But when I got home, I was tired. And you know, when some people have had chills, and all of that is just that the immune response is happening.
So I got a question, if I, you know, because we do know that when you get a reaction to a vaccine, it's actually something you can sort of be aware of and say, this is my immune system kicking in. You can feel good about, even though you feel bad and you don't feel well, you know that your vaccine is working and that your body's starting to kick in. But what if you don't get any side effects? Somebody said, does that mean that my immune system is not responding?
No, not necessarily.
Right.
I mean, all of us are different. All of us have different levels of pain tolerance. You know, one of my colleagues said that he had a fever and he thought he was getting sick, but you know, the next day he was fine. And these are all potential side effects, but if you don't get any of them, you shouldn't feel worried about it.
Would you advise somebody to take a Tylenol or an ibuprofen after you get the shot to deal with the soreness? Would that make any difference?
I took a Tylenol for the discomfort, and I took a Tylenol, you know, when it woke me up, and then later on in the day when it was still feeling sore, I also took an Aleve. And now, I felt better.
A big question we get commonly is, we know that these vaccines are stored at freezing temperatures, at Arctic temperatures. Is it cold when it goes into your arm?
No,
do you feel it cold?
Because it's defrosted by then.
Oh, so it's not even chilly going
on. They actually take it out so that it's compatible with your body temperature. I mean, it's not going to feel cold, and also they take it out, and that's a good thing. And I'm not surprised more people haven't asked that question. And, you know, other people are concerned because it was called Operation Warp Speed, and they think it happened too fast. And I think the name was, maybe next time they have to do something like that, they wanted people to work hard on it, and they wanted to show that they were working hard and fast. But, you know, I want to point out that that mRNA platform has been around for for about 10 years. And they were trying to do other vaccines that way, and it worked out for COVID-19. So the way the vaccine is made is different than some of the ones that we have already taken, and that took years to be developed.
I think it's important to remind people that the technology that allowed the fast production of this vaccine was in existence. Like we had that science available to us for the first time, we being not me, obviously, but the people who were developing the vaccine. So they started at a much better place than, we've said in the past, it took the fastest before was 5 years, but that's because they didn't have access to, sequencing and, so, all of this sort of technology that allows this vaccine to be made. So I'm 1,000% confident. Bring it on. I am last on the list. I'm not going to get the vaccine for a very long time, but I'm okay with that. I'm happy to continue to take COVID precautions and wearing a mask. And
as the J&J vaccine gets made, we'll have perhaps another option, and if they increase production, we'll have more vaccine.
I think the rest of us, I think that, about half the population is eligible now. I think that those of us who are not eligible, it'll be the spring, it'll be April or May. And we've gotten this far, we can get there. I'm certainly happy to.
That, they're going to do vaccinations at Citi Field in New York, and also at Disneyland. And I think they're also going to be doing it at Yankee Stadium. So I think that that's going to just open up more spots for people.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are getting frustrated. I'm hearing right now that older people are having to navigate online and make appointments. And so if you know an older person in your life, support them, help them with the tech, help them get their appointment. But there is vaccine out there. People will get the appointments and they'll get their second dose. And just requires a little bit of patience. But if we've learned anything during the pandemic, I think we've learned patience. So I think we can get there. And if we just support each other along the way, we can all get vaccinated sooner than later.
Well said. And I want to thank you for joining me here today on Heart to Heart with Dr. Nieca.
It's always nice to see you. I always enjoy talking with you. Thank you for all the work you do for patients, for women, for, I just have to say that you and I first started talking when you wrote your book, Women Are Not Small Men. And you were very early on that statement. It's such an obvious statement, right? But you were really among the first people to say, let's really think about women and women's health. And so I've always been your fan. So thanks for including me. I'm happy to be here. Take care.
Take care.